Ephesians 2, 8 and 10. And it says, "For it is by grace, God's remarkable compassion and favor, drawing you to Christ, that you have been saved, actually delivered from judgment and given eternal life. It says through faith, eternal life through faith. It says, and this salvation is not of yourself, not through your own efforts. Look at your neighbor and say, it's not through your own efforts. But it is the undeserved, gracious gift of God. Say it one more time. It is the undeserved, gracious gift of God. All right, I'm going to keep on. Y'all don't have to say this. It says, not as a result of your own works, nor an attempt to keep the law. Did you hear that? Somebody better hear that. Nor of an attempt to keep God's law. You hear me? So that no one will be able to boast or take credit in any way for his salvation. For we are his workmanship, his own masterpiece of work, a work of art. Look at your neighbor and say, you're a work of art. You're
a work of art.
Created in Christ Jesus, reborn from above, spiritually transformed, renewed, ready to be used. Uh-oh. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? Ready to be used for good works, which God's prepared for us beforehand. Look at your neighbor and say, God already prepared you beforehand. To slap a demon out of somebody. To heal the sick. To make whole the broken. Did you hear that?
Amen.
By you accepting God, God says, I already prepared you. Remember, what does it say in the prophet Dion says? God calls the what? He does not call the qualified. He does not qualify the called. Say that one time. He does not call the qualified. He qualifies the called. And Prophet Dion is even beginning to give you the description of how we used to play basketball. And y'all, anybody that play basketball know y'all sit there and they choose the best to the least to be on their team. But God says you're already on my team. I place you on the team, and then I qualify you to be there. Are you hearing me? That's good. And it says, listen to me, for we are his workmanship, his own masterwork and work of art, created in Christ Jesus, reborn from above, spiritually transformed, renewed, ready to be used for good works, which God prepared us for. Beforehand, taking paths which he set, so that we would walk in them, living a good life, which he prearranged and made ready for us. You guys may be seated. I told you guys probably a couple of weeks ago that I was going to be talking about relationships today, my next time I preach. And so that was very accurate there, sir, already. And God says, I'm going to deliver you from the bad habit as well. Things, I hear the Lord say. The enemy placed a lot of bad habits on you. Stay, God says, I got a word for you. I'm going to deliver you, set you free. And God says, I'm going to change your perspective towards him. Because men have injured you. Thank you, Father. Thank you, God. Do we know that when a man injured us, it changes our perspective of God? Because oftentimes, as children, when we grow up, the only thing we have, the closest thing to God, is our pastors, right? And so when they injured us, we look at it as God injured us. And you're looking at somebody that was probably in my 20s that I said I would never come to church again in my life because people had injured me. I mean, I saw the pastor sleep with my mother's best friend, get her pregnant. I saw my mom leave my dad for the organist of the church. You see, I see all this stuff in church. And so I was done with God, per se, because I saw that you told me that I had to do all this stuff to get God, but I see you wasn't doing it yourself. Doesn't that make you upset? And so today's message is religion versus relationship. Religion versus relationship. And so, Marquisa, that was very accurate in the Spirit of the Lord. Do you see how God can use anybody? Are you hearing me? And she called me yesterday, actually just really excited in her spirit, just like, I need to tell people this. That wasn't courthouse. I didn't tell her a word to say about how good we were and all that stuff. That was out of her heart that she said that. Are you hearing me? And so what's today's message? All right. And so today, one thing God showed me is I had a vision of Church Unchained. And I had a vision of the brothers and the different people that God says was supposed to already be ministering. And when I saw you guys, you were side by side by me. You was on my side ministering with me. Not just wiping my sweat, not just there to see what I needed, not just to grab a trash can, but you were casting out demons as well. Are you hearing me? And so God wants to build this church up. And this is where religion goes wrong and the church goes wrong is we just go to a church and we forget about the gifts that God placed inside of us. God did not ordain us to just stay at a church for 50 years, and that was the only thing you did for 50 years. Your gift never came forth. What about the calling on your life?
That's right.
Right? How's that ever birth? How's that ever come forth?
Right.
How do you ever learn how to minister to somebody who's broken? You won't. You'll just sit there and you'll support the gift that I have in me, and God's going to hold me accountable because I never released your gift. I never prophesied into your life. I never brought the gift that God had inside of you forth. And so even in 2021, even coming up to through this year, we're going to start releasing people that you probably wouldn't even think would come up here and preach, speak, because we have to start training. Are you hearing me? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to send somebody up here who got a bunch of sin in their life and is not living right, and I'm not going to do all that. All right? I'm not going to let nobody lay hands on anybody. Somebody got a spirit of fear in them still, and you're not going to be praying for people. I'm not going to do all that. But we're going to begin to release the gifts. And because, the first time I started ministering to people, I was shaking. And I had a mic in my hand. I was literally, I was scared. Anybody tell you how nervous they are when they first come up. That's a normal thing. But I can explain to you that when the boldness of God comes upon you, everything else goes away.
That's right.
It goes away. The feelings of nervousness goes away. And you begin to know, listen, God has ordained me to preach to the sick, to make those whole. Are you hearing me?
Amen.
And the spirit of boldness will come upon you, and you're able to be a new person. And so, to start off with the message, though, we're going to be talking about relationships. And God told me a lot of us. Anybody got any bad relationships or had some bad relationships in their life?
Yes.
Anybody? Huh? Oh, 3 people in here, huh? That's it. 3 people. Anybody had a bad boss? Okay, everybody can understand that. You have a relationship with your boss? You can have a relationship with your boss too.
Yep.
All right. Anybody had some bad relationships? Spousal relationships? Anybody? All right, some bad. Okay, so before I get started with the message, we have to understand what true Christianity is. And do anybody know what the difference is between our religion, our Christianity than any other religion in this world? Anybody? This is an interactive church too, pretty much. So if those of you are new, we allow people to speak and tell you with your heart. You can just say, don't try to process if you're saying the right answer or wrong. Just say whatever comes out of you. Fair?
Christ-centered.
It's Christ-centered. That's very good. Anybody else? Very good. That's it. Every other religion in this world is based on something you have to do to get to God. Now you hear me? Everyone. What's the difference? The cross of Jesus Christ, right? It's a relationship of it's a divine relationship that God has given all of us. And so the accomplishment is based off of the death of Jesus Christ. Anybody felt like they was never good enough?
Yes.
We're not good enough.
Right.
That's why God sent Jesus to make us good enough. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
To make us good enough. And so everything in every other religion that we have, this is the difference between us, Christianity, and any other religion. The difference is they say do, and our religion says done. It's already done. When Jesus died, it's done. Are you hearing me? You have to do something to obtain. And so if you ever have anybody, it's a lot of false religions coming out there. If you notice, the Black Israelites, all this other crazy stuff that's really, really strong and coming up, where it only gives you part of the truth.
Right.
Are you hearing me? Yeah. Anybody with common sense can tell me, now, if I take you the Bible and you give me a Bible verse, and you tell me God, they took Jesus' name out, the real son's name out, the Bible. But his name was so powerful that they had to keep 3 letters in there. They couldn't take them all out. Are you hearing me? Does that sound retarded to y'all? I mean, to me, it was immediate retardedness. Because if I have the power to take out 4 letters, I can take out the other 3. Anybody? I mean, that's just common sense to me. I mean, I had to stop saying that, though, because my wife said, listen, you stop saying that's just common sense, because the Bible tells you I withhold common sense from some people. Did you know that? I make them as dumb as an ostrich who has a child and walks away from them. Some people don't have wisdom. So don't think that just because you got wisdom and that just makes sense. That's God on you.
That's right.
To be able to process something.
That's right.
I had to realize that, because I used to always say, yeah, that's just dumb. That's common sense. And God had to have me look at that is not common sense. I give you the wisdom to decipher and look at and see that if you go this direction, you'll make it. That's wisdom. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Every other religion says it's a difference between human works for salvation versus God's grace. You see, every Hinduism, I gotta level up and get to this level. It's almost like a video game. I gotta ascend to the highest level. When I get there, I'll finally have God. I'll finally have made it. Are you hearing me? It's the difference between conditional law, obeying, and you'll be blessed, and unconditional love. Just receive. That's the hardest thing I ever have out of all you people in here. Everyone here. Hardest thing I get out of everybody is to just say, receive God's love. Just receive it.
Yep.
No. If I tell you to cut an arm off, all right, I don't want to, but I understand. Go ahead. But God just says, receive that I delivered you. Right? That's the hardest part for people to receive, just God's grace. It's the difference between man's way and God's way. Okay, so let's look at the question today for everyone is, are you religious or do you have a relationship? I want you to ask yourself that. Are you religious? Because just because you don't go to a religious church don't mean you ain't religious. All right? Let's take a look at that. Let's just go ahead and get that out the blue right now. It's a lot of religious seeds that God has to break out of us.
Yes.
You know what religion is? Religious is? It's a false way. I'm getting ahead of myself. But all of us have religious seeds, even from my mother, from my parents. I told y'all about the story about the iron board, right? I used to iron my pants backwards. I had the big part towards the small part, and the small part of my pants would go down. And I would always ask myself, why my pants fall off the iron board? But when my wife said, you're ironing the wrong way, I immediately said, no, I'm not. This is the way you iron your pants. No, honey, look at the pants. It's big right here to fit the big part, and it's small here to fit the... No, that's not the way. You do it, honey. Why? Because I had seen my mother do this for years, right? My mother ironed like this for years, and so I immediately took my conscience took note of that this was the right way that you iron, right? Until my wife left, and I began to look at my pants. I said, this do kind of make sense. They part do. They do line up. Turn the pants, and it actually works better, y'all. Did I apologize to you for that? Never. I'm sorry, honey. I'm sorry for allowing religion to stop me from ironing my pants the right way. That's what you call a religious seed. It's something that was embedded in me. Are you hearing me? But it was wrong. Have anybody fought anything? Yeah, listen, most of us, I know for me, we grew up in a very holiness of hell church. I mean, and many of us, listen, I've argued with people, ready to punch people in the face about what a pastor has said, and I never read the Bible for myself. Yep. Anybody?
Yep.
I never read this in the Bible myself, but I'll argue with it up and down because the pastor said it.
Yep.
Did you know most of that stuff when I got older, it was wrong?
Yeah.
I'm like, I probably be apologizing to a lot of people right now if God brought them people back. Like, I'm sorry, man, you was right about that. But because I went to my church and they went to another church, I received what they said as the truth. Are you hearing me? That's why it's very important. That's why you see us not doing religious. 2 things God told me not to do. not to take an offering and stop the thing, the service or offering, and try to give you a motivation speak to give more money, and never to put 3 seats up here, one that's higher than another, and I'm sitting above everybody. Are you hearing me? Because that's religion. You can immediately see, oh, that must be the head pastor there. And don't it make you feel like your sins are greater than theirs? Because they're on the pulpit, they're up here, and you're down here. But God says the greater among you is what? It's going to serve. Are you here? It's going to serve. Why do you think we serve so much? So why do you think we put 3-4 hours into trying to get demons up out of you? Are you hearing me? I serve. I don't care about my new outfit. I don't care about me, y'all scratching my skin off sometimes. Y'all. Listen, I've been punched, kicked, scratched. Y'all name it. I mean, from the daughters that said they love me. I mean, I'm just gonna go ahead and throw that out there, y'all. Taxi, Marsha. Throw that out there. They're the ones that said they love me. I've been thrown up on. Snot shot across the room at me. You know? Cussed out. Given the finger a couple of times. Listen, God got to get rejection out of you. You see how God got to get rejection out of you? Listen, if you start taking it offensive, I've been smacked before. I've been tackled. Wesley's tackled. Are y'all seeing the abuse that apostle goes through? Y'all give me a minute to cry. But as long as those demons don't win, I don't mind. Are you hearing me? Are you hearing me? Because they're fleshly spirits, and what they're going to do is try to get you to get rose up in your flesh. So if you notice, when something like that happens, I always give it love back. Because it wants me to fight, because that's where it gets its strength from. Right? The more flesh it acts, the more. And so let me just go ahead and ask you one more time. Which are you? Do you have religion or do you have a relationship? I want you to start pondering that question in your heart. All right? As God speaks. So we grew up in, of course, a Holiness of Hell church, and I was a drummer, bass guitar player. When we went to church, listen, we was at church Sunday. We went to church, probably 7 o'clock in the morning. We got out about 5 o'clock. We ate food, and we went straight back. We didn't get out of there at 3 o'clock in the morning. And then had to get up and go to school in the morning time. Every day was dedicated to God. That whole day of Sunday was dedicated to God. I mean, it was here. Listen, I was a child in there. I was falling asleep. My mom thunked me in the head. Get up. You know, that's how we got to fear the Lord from my mom. She'd turn around, we playing around. She'd turn around and look at us. Oh, your heart, boy. Your heart hit the seat, boy, like, You'd be praying on the way home. I hope she forget. I mean, no, Mama didn't forget too many times. Whooping you at 3 o'clock in the morning, like, Mama, you too tired? That put the fear of the Lord. My mama said, I'm gonna get you. She didn't have to say much. And my mother was strong. Listen, I'm telling you. I don't know what y'all, my mother was strong. I mean, strong. I was like, man. And she let us know she was strong too. Yeah. Wrestle with you and everything. And so, I did all this stuff and I had a religious tone with God, but I never was taught, and I never did understand the grace of God. At every religious church I ever went to, I never heard the message. I only heard, do what I tell you to do if you want to be saved. And if you come against this, you're in rebellion. Anybody ever want to go through that before? Yes. And so it was always, so I end up always trying to, anybody have start working for your salvation, start doing things? Right? Some of y'all right now, if you hurt somebody, what do you start doing? You don't go say sorry, you'll go buy them something. Oh, it's in the house. Uh-oh. Instead of saying sorry for hurting you, you'll go buy them a gift. That's called faith by works.
Yes, it is. That's
faith by works. This is a perfect example of faith by works right there. Look, you're not going to believe the simpler thing is just to say sorry and keep your $50. Right?
Yes.
And so you go buy a $100 gift, a new iPhone, everything else, new Jordans, just to say I'm sorry. My mom was like that. And I told you the time she told me, she asked me to paint the I think it was the sunroom. And I said, yeah, I'll paint it, Mom. So I didn't paint it that day. Came home. She said, how come you didn't paint the same room? I said I'll paint it. I didn't say today I was going to paint it. But she said, if you ain't got to paint it tomorrow, get out. And I held that in my heart for so long. And I began to start playing chess with life that no one in my life would ever be able to kick me out their house. And so my mom would very rarely, I don't know if you ever got an apology from my mom before. I think one time out of my entire life that I can remember my mom apologizing, and it wasn't an apology, it was a meal, it was my favorite cooked meal. Because she knows she was wrong. And came home, cooked your favorite meal. Still no apology for what you did. Are you hearing me? Yeah. And so I began to have a life, and I began to start forming myself to try to apply myself to this God. Are you hearing me? And I say it in quotes because it wasn't the God that I serve today. This God that they taught me about. They told me he was a God that had owned the cattle of all the hills. He had this, but I always saw the pastor with holes in his cars and rust buckets that they were driving. But they told me about this God that was so good that you must follow every rule to get there. That's what religion does, and religion has messed up a lot of people. So much and so that anybody have done a big sin in it, what they consider a big sin, that they think God is unforgivable. Like, God, you're not gonna forgive me on this. And that's the way I used to live. Even as children, us raising up, we said a lot to each other. Oh, you going to hell? You lie. Anybody? Yeah. That's what we used to. That's how we used to do as children. Oh, you going to hell? And something would come over you, like, heart start beating fast. God, forgive me. Is it gonna be today that you take me, God? Right.
So true.
So I get older, 20-something, we have a prophecy. And this guy begins to prophesy to us and says, hey, remember prophecy is so amazing. I was introduced to religion, but I remember I went to another church, and it was I think his name was Pastor Miller. I never forget his name. And he began to prophesy to me. And keep in mind, I'm 450 plus pounds at the time. And probably more than that at the time. And remember, in high school, we considered ugly ducklings. No mustache, no beard. We just got these big old round, fat faces. Every girl I tried to talk to told me, I remind you of my brother. You remind me of your brother? Nah, not interested. And so, I go into this church. It's true. Listen, I'm being real with y'all. Listen, I had some low self-esteem back then, real. And so I go into this church, and I'm getting ready to walk out, and the guy begins to start speaking in tongues. He says, stand right there. He says, God says that women are going to begin to start coming towards you. Be careful. He says, just say you're on the Lord's side. I see you surrounded with a bunch of women. I'm like, this dude is out of his monkey mind. I don't ever get no women. Are you hearing me? I'm thinking this dude is... But I said his tongues were cold-blooded, though. He had some cold-blooded tongues. So I said, man, he got some cold-blooded tongues, but he off on that one. Well, I think a year or two later, I lose over 100 pounds. Guess what happened, y'all?
The lady stopped flying.
Mama Chantel was all over, brother. I just don't leave it like that. It was all over, brother. We were talking about this yesterday. We were talking about how we met yesterday. We had some heavy fellowship yesterday we had a little disagreement of how we met. So, but every once in a while we go through a little, no, you did this, now you met me. I was there. It was like, yeah, she was with me. Thank you, Prophet. That was the word of the prophet. Thank you. She tried to act like she didn't notice me, y'all, but she was staring at my face when I looked up. She acted like, no, I was playing with my phone. No, you was staring at a brother. Mama. And so, it's okay. So we was laughing about this like yesterday. We was just joking about it and laughing, but grace finally hits home, and I realized that, God, I'm not good enough. This is the reason why Jesus came back. This is why he sent Jesus. And so I began all these little rituals. Anybody? I had these rituals before I went to bed. Anybody? When I sinned, I had to make sure I prayed before I go to bed. God, forgive me for everything. I don't care if it was 6 o'clock in the morning. I had this little ritual that I had this little ritual prayer that I had to say because I didn't want to wake up in hell. Anybody? Was it just me? No. You? No, you just got through doing some dirt, boy. You went home. You know what? I got to the point where I just say, God, forgive me when I get home. That's religion. I'll just say, God, forgive me when I get home. So I'll be good. I'm clear. I used to do that all the time. I had no relationship with God. I just had religion. That's all I had. A form. Are you hearing me? And so, God had to, listen, when I got older, I had to forget everything I ever learned about God other than there was a God. Literally, I had to had God wipe everything out of my mind that I was taught. Because it tainted me. It tainted who God was in my eyes. I thought God was this fire-breathing dragon that was waiting for me to mess up. And he couldn't wait. I mean, the minute I messed up, oh, God, please don't strike me down now. And God, I come to find out, listen, God is so further from me. If you notice, even in the Bible, the prophets that are going, and God is saying, speak to my people and tell them that I'm coming, I'm getting ready to destroy. Do y'all know 4 or 5 years went past during this period? See, y'all just read the Bible and think that 10 minutes later, God came back and destroyed. But 4 or 5 years went past, and that's why the prophets would get burnt out. Because they would say, God, you've been having me, just imagine that. You're looking like a fool for 5 years.
Right.
God says he's going to kill you. And so what does the man begin to say? Yeah, look at this nut.
Right.
This crazy guy.
Right.
He's just talking. 5 years you've been saying this and nothing happened. Same thing with Noah. Mm-hmm. You've been talking about a flood for, I think that was probably 10 years that went past before the flood happened. And so does that show you that God's mercy is good? And so why do we think that he's going to destroy us every time we mess up? Are you hearing me? That's religion. And so the difference between true Christianity deals directly, this is the difference between, and that's why I say it with the difference between our Christianity and other religions, it deals definitely with the heart of the issue that we're going to talk about today. And the heart of that issue is legalism. Yeah, write that down, legalism. And there's 3 forms of legalism I'm going to talk about. There's 3 types of legalism. 3 of them that we all deal with. The first one is externalism. I'm going to tell you the definition to that. Externalism. It's E-X-T-E-R-N-A-L-I-S-M. Now, externalism, let me give you a definition for that. It's your reasons for action that are identified with the objectives of what happened or what's currently happening in the world. Did you get that? Mm-hmm. Your reason for action, the way you act, I'll just say it in our kind of our terms. The reason why you do something is based off of what happened before to you or what's currently happening in this world. Right. Okay? You get that? Now, let me give you the definition of internalism, because that's what God is. No fact about the world can provide a reason for your action independently of your own desires or beliefs. In other words, nothing that this world does can get me to stop believing that God can save me. Amen. God would do this. Nothing you can do, nothing I see on TV will ever tell me that God is not good to me. It'll never deter my belief in God. Now, you hear me? Can we get that again? So externalism, you want the externalism? Yeah. Externalism is your reason for action. Internalism. Okay, no fact about the world can provide a reason for action independently of your own desires or beliefs. In other words, you're not going to act, and you're not going to, no one can get you to do anything without you checking with your religion first, the Spirit of God first. Are you hearing me? Yeah. Without you checking it based off of, yeah, I know what they're saying about this virus is, but as a matter of fact, my son, y'all know they said there was 153-something thousand people that died from COVID, right? Right? So, do you know, as a matter of fact, my son just got through giving me an update. He said CDC has now updated that to only 9,000 people. Quietly updated it. It wasn't on the news. It wasn't broadcast. Right. See, but the Spirit of the Lord already told me they're falsifying these numbers. Yes. Why? Because it draws people to fear. Yeah. You know, I talked to a military guy. He says, listen, man, He said, I went to listen. I was actually in the Marines, and I was taught on chemical warfare. He said, these mans can't stop a thing. He said, if you wanted to really stop it, if it was really true, you would have to have on a full astronaut suit. Right. With oxygen on, no air ever hitting you. That's the only way you can stop it. By the way, you're killing yourself because you're breathing in your own carbon monoxide. And
Exactly.
didn't they teach us that carbon monoxide is bad for us?
Right.
You're breathing in your own carbon monoxide. And so when people start having lung problems, that's going to be COVID too.
Right.
Are you hearing me? I have not worn a mask yet unless somebody forced me to do it.
Exactly.
Are you hearing me? It's people panicking in the store. 6 feet! 6 feet! People are going crazy. Listen, fear will grab you, will take you to another place you would never believe you would go. And so y'all got the definition of externalism, right?
Yes.
All right, let's look at this type of legalist focuses only on obeying rules that they can naturally attach themselves to. You get that?
What is it?
This legalist. The first one? No, we're not. I didn't go to the third one yet. The first one. I'm on the first one still. Externalism. Internalism was just the opposite of externalism, so that's not one of them. All right. I just want to give you the opposite of. So externalism is the first one. We still on number 1. But externalism, this type of legalism, this type of legalism focuses only on obeying the bare rules. Are you hearing me? Because you can attach yourself to a natural rule. You know that? Anybody saw anybody at work that was very rule driven? Like they wouldn't break the rule not for nobody. Are you hearing me? Nobody. And so that externalism keeps you always needing to feel that you're doing something. I'm following this rule. Are you hearing me? Okay, so basically externalism, it involves extracting the law of God from its original content. That's what it is. You guys write that down. It extracts the law of God from its original content. I've met so many Christians that are hung up on obeying rules and regulations. Are you hearing me? That's the only thing they focus on is rules and regulations. The rules, regulations, rules, regulations. That's it. They conceive Christianity as a series of do's and don'ts. That's how I'm gonna get to God. Anybody ever meet anybody like that?
Yes.
Do's and don'ts. This is how I'm gonna get to God. And if I do the don't one time, God's not gonna ever forgive me. You hear me? They operate on a very cold and deadly set of morals. Just very cold, and this is it. You just dry. All right. The concern is only merely keeping God's law. That's it. And so that's the first one. We're gonna go to the second one now. And so, before I go to the second one, I want you guys to realize that God definitely is certainly concerned with His rules, His law. Now, don't think that external. I'm just giving you a point that you can't focus on just one. Like this is one thing. All right. He's definitely concerned about His law. So He doesn't negate and say you don't have to follow His law. Right? You hear me? But there's more to the story. Don't forget about it. We best not forget about there's more to the story. If we just focus on the one thing, the enemy has us. And I'll give you an example. God gave laws such as the 10 Commandments, right? Yep. If you look at the Bible, God becomes gracious to Israel, right? He gives the 10 Commandments. Where people before were just sleeping with their moms, their wives, other people's wives. They was just doing anything they wanted to. Because God never told them no law, right? Now, animals don't have any law. They just go sleep with anything, right? Right? Okay, so if you notice in the animal kingdom, I watch monkeys that they got a raw set of rules, boy. Raw. They bite each other's fingers off and everything. For the woman. It's crazy. But He comes on scene and gives the 10 Commandments. Then He becomes gracious to His people. Then He redeems His people out of slavery. Only then, after grace has entered into a relationship, God enters into a relationship with Israel, did He give him laws that says, this is what pleases me. You hear me? Then God gave Israel laws and said, hey, this is what pleases me. If you do this, this is what pleases me. Then he gave them the laws. It was only, but are you seeing that? He entered the relationship with them first, just like the prophet said. He puts you on the team first, then he qualifies you. Then he says, if you love me, these are the laws you should be keeping, right? And so, I'm trying to put it this right way. Nah, yeah, that's too much for y'all. The legalist isolates the law of God from God who gave the law. Write that down. This is what a legalist does. They isolate the law from God who gave the law. They separate the two. As this first form does. He is not so much as seeking to obey God or honor Christ as he is obeying rules that are devoid of any personal relationship with God. And so they don't. Again, that was who I was. I had no relationship with God, but I was always seeking to please God in rules that I knew was wrong. You hear me? Yeah. So if I did something wrong, oh God, he's gonna kill me because of this. But I never had a relationship with God. Right? You guys getting this? Yeah. Okay, now we're gonna go into the second type of legalism. Y'all got to about 7 o'clock today?
Yes, sir.
8 o'clock? No?
Take your time.
Listen, we don't hold you guys that long, but you know what? I don't ever want to get to a point where I lock in and I say, God, you can't move. We got to be out of here by 1 o'clock. That's what I'm not going to ever do. And so if God wants to take the 7 o'clock, casting demons out of people, that's what's going to happen. All right? Although we have not spent that long, we probably almost spent that long casting demons out of people, but yeah. But I want you guys to, and God, thank you, Father, for reminding me, because God told me to tell you guys, listen, I'm going to listen, in the spirit realm, I unlocked another door for you guys. I unlocked another door of grace. And where you see the enemy before that would stay, he's not going to be able to stay no more. Are you hearing me? The weapons that the enemy had placed on you, he's going to come try everything, he said, but let him come try, that's what the prophecy about. Let him come try everything this time, because none of it's going to work. All of it's going to fail. Every single one of them. And so God has unleashed a grace upon us for deliverance. And listen, I felt, and like Patricia was saying, I feel like a new level of authority in the spirit realm. Like it's a, listen, I wasn't scared before, but it's something about knowing when God is with you. Yes, Lord. Are you hearing me? Yes. It's something about knowing when God was with you, and when I stand before a demon. Listen, when God shows you that a demon is scared of you, it's something about a boldness that comes upon you. Not pride, but a boldness that comes upon you. And I'm noticing even different spirits that were strong men coming forth talking, they're now hiding in people. They're hiding. And you have to call them for it now. Where before they came forward laughing like, I'm not going nowhere. You hear me? That shows me that two things, that you guys are seeking God, and that you're now living a disciplined life. You hear me? And so what God, and I'm gonna do a teaching on this as well, but what God is showing me is there's, and I read a book on it, I forgot the name of the book, but there's keys to every demon that you cast out. Jezebel has a key that you got to use to get out. And so what happened is right now, a lot of people are using old works to get demons out. Does y'all know the enemy changes strategies? Huh? Have y'all all been stop something and you finally conquer something and all of a sudden he comes from a different way? Right. Yeah. With the same thing though. Right. And you fall for it. Yeah. Right. It's like, man, how'd you come through the same thing? You fell for the same thing, but he came a different way. Yes. And so if the enemy does that, do you think our stale tactics from 1980 that we can use come out of them? That's not gonna work. That's not gonna work on the strong man. Y'all sprinkling holy water. That's not gonna work on the strong man. There's strategies that, and that's what I want to tell you, and I want to release to you to the prayer team. God says, I want you to start praying for strategies, new strategies to defeat the enemy. Every week. And I want the people of God and the church to start praying, God, release new strategies on how to defeat the enemy. And that's what I've been praying for. And God has been showing me new strategies. And so I've been actually implementing these strategies. And they're working. Listen, they're working. Why? Because the Holy Spirit said it. Right. Not me. These strategies are working, but there's more to it. Are you hearing me? And I'm just going back to it now. Now, the second part, and to understand the second type of legalism, we must understand and remember that in the New Testament, it distinguished the difference between the letter of the law, the outward form of the law. See, that's what's called the letter of the law. The letter of the law of the Bible. That's the outward, that's the externalism. I'm reading, I understand it this way. All right? Anybody been polluted by reading the Word of God? Very confused? Just like, what in the world? I don't even understand it. Externalism. That's because you process things on the natural, and the enemy can confuse you as you're reading. Right? Okay, and then it separates, so to understand, before I say the second part of legalism, we have to understand that God distinguishes specifically in the New Testament, he comes in and separates the difference between the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. Right. Did you know that? It's a letter of the law, and then there's a spirit. Write that down. There's a letter of the law, number one, and then there's a spirit of the law. And with that, I'm going to say the second form of legalism. It's called selfism. Anybody, y'all can, anybody that's been in third grade should be able to know what that is. Right? Now, there's a very small difference between the first one, externalism, and selfism. Just a small difference. It's kind of the same thing, but it's different. Selfism, forms of legalism, it concentrates on one's own interests. All right? And I'm going to show you, this is where a lot of us go wrong. This is where a lot of us go wrong. Externalism, but this is where a lot of us go wrong, especially in relationships. It concentrates on one's own interests. Anybody in here begin to start setting some rules in their heart after they get hurt by somebody? Yeah. Huh? Uh-oh. The next time I date somebody, they're going to have to take this application, fill it out, give me a hair sample, a credit check. I want to see what size their boogers are. Listen, we get deep. Listen, y'all, especially y'all women, y'all deep on these rules, for real. This is what I call playing chess. Listen, because one person injured you, you begin to start treating everybody as if they're the same person. Are you hearing me? Now, how many have moms in here? Anybody moms? Now, how many know, we all know that our children, every single one of them is different, isn't it? Yep. Some of them, you can say, stop. The other ones, you already know, you got to hit them in the throat. No questions asked. Can't even breathe. And so for you to try to treat everybody, because the hard-headed rebellious one did something, for you to try to treat everybody and create one rule, you would injure your family, wouldn't you? Yes. Mom, why are you doing this to me? And she did this. From now on, because your sister came in past her curfew? No, everybody's curfew is now 8 o'clock. How? Are you hearing me? This is where churches go wrong as well. And even previous churches that I've been to before, I've seen them actually make rules for people based on the hurt that they received from another member. Are you hearing me? And so therefore, if another person took advantage of me financially, and I gave them money, and I found out that they really didn't need the money, now I'm gonna create a rule that says that nobody that comes to me can get more than $50. But this person used them. Now this person has a real need. And I placed a rule in place to protect my self-interest. Are you seeing that? Because I got used, now I don't want to feel that way no more. Now, yep, get ready to come on. Some of us do this in our lives too. Anybody? Yeah. And so let's look at this. Selfism always divorces the letter of the, it actually divorces the letter of the law from the spirit of the law. It keeps it separate. It divorces it. You're supposed to have both. You need the letter of the law, you need the spirit of the law. And I'm going to show you the difference. It obeys the letter of the law, but it violates the spirit of the law. And let me show you what that looks like. Because there's only a small difference between externalism and selfism. And so how does one keep the letter of the law and violate the spirit of the law? Let me give you an example, and I'll give you a natural example. Who got a driver license in here? Everybody drive?
Yeah.
Okay. So suppose that you know what certain lanes you like driving in, right?
Yeah.
Everybody, I kind of stay in that left lane. But suppose you have a person that like to drive 40 miles an hour. I'll put it that way. The minimum speed is 40 miles an hour, right? This is how you separate the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law. And I'm driving 40 miles an hour, and I love to drive 40 miles an hour. But it begins to rain and snow, right? Everybody else is slowing down because they don't want to slide into nobody. But I continue to go 40 miles an hour, even if I hear slow down, you're going to kill somebody. But I'm doing the letter of the law. I'm driving 40 miles an hour. I'm not against the law, right? But the spirit of the law I violated because my spirit just told me to slow down. Are you hearing me? This is what we do to God. Your spirit just told you to do something, but, well, I followed it. Well, it says don't fornicate. It really didn't say don't do this. Are you hearing me?
Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Very good. Just because you can don't mean you should. And Paul speaks about that. It actually says, listen, I know all things are good for you, but everything is not sufficient for you. Beneficial for you. In other words, I can do these things, but it's not beneficial for you. Right. And so, when you violate the spirit of the law, you have violated the purpose of the law, what God created in the first place. Are you hearing me? And so they created. Why did they create the speed limit? For our safety, right? And so that's the spirit of the law. It's for our safety. And so for me to continue to go 40 miles an hour and I know it's snowing outside and I can hurt somebody, I've just violated the spirit of the law. Right? But this is what people do. But it says minimum speed 40 miles an hour. Are you hearing me?
Right.
I'll follow the letter of the law, but I won't violate. I'll separate that from the spirit of the law. I'll shut that part off.
So good.
Are you hearing that? And so that's the second point. Anybody? Is God speaking to you? Oh, Lord. The ones that just stop at them stop signs and blow right straight through it. I'm rolling. Lord, I'm going to put some of y'all in some driving school. We the church going to pay for it. I promise you. Lord have mercy. All right, so that's how one violates the spirit of the law. Are you hearing me? So let's take that to now the Bible, right? Because there's a lot of gray areas in the Bible, right? Consider gray areas, I would say, right? The Bible don't really talk about masturbation, right? Don't really say nothing about that. It don't say nothing about pornography. It don't say. But your spirit testifies against you when you do it, right? But you violate, you'll keep the letter of the law and say, well, I didn't fornicate, God.
Right.
But I violated the spirit. God, listen, God is in the spirit of the law. That's the internalism, right? He's inside of you, so you're violating that and you try to separate the two. Are you seeing that? Okay. So listen, I'm preaching in here to myself. Y'all can be quiet if you want to.
Amen.
Listen, the way I'm feeling, I don't need none of y'all help. I'm slapping demons out of anybody anyway. Listen, I feel a boldness in the spirit. I really do. I feel a great boldness in the spirit. And listen, the enemy, listen, I got an art with the enemy. I don't know about y'all.
Amen.
Y'all can keep on letting them smack y'all in the face if you want to. But you know what? We'll hate men, and God gave us permission. Actually, listen, if you notice in the Bible, it says, listen, God, I hate the enemies of your enemies. He says, I hate them with a passion. Amen. Are you hearing me? I hate the enemy. I don't hate the person who did this, but I hate the enemy.
Right.
All right? That's my passion towards God. God, let your enemies be my enemies. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
And so, listen, I'm not going to get ahead of myself. And so the second kind of legalism obeys the external while the heart is far removed from any desire to honor God. Are you hearing me? The intent of his law or his Christ. And so let's take a look at, I'm going to throw in, this is what James was saying, and what, it was James, right? Jerome. I'm sorry, I'm saying it right now. Jerome. You look like a James. Your new name is James, brother. James. Got the head shaped like a James. I'm sorry, I'm bad with names. I'll merge some names. The Lord is giving you a new name now. Jerome James.
Somebody told me, as long as you don't call me late for dinner. That's it.
And so let's get to the relationship part, because did y'all know? I love what you said though, Jerome, when you said that. You said, listen, they violated my what? They violate my space. They violate my boundaries. When he said, listen, there's a law to every relationship. Did you know that? There should be laws to every relationship. The reason why we get injured and we have so many bad relationships is because we don't set boundaries. We don't set laws. Are you hearing me? And so if God, listen, when God allows you on his team, he says you're my friend, he allows you on the team, does he give you full access to his kingdom right away?
No.
So why do we give full access to everybody that said we say friend? Wow. The minute they come on our team, here's all of me. Checking account number. I trusted them. And they took all of my money. If God causes us to prove ourselves before he gives us the next,
Right.
why do we give everybody full access to our lives?
Amen. That's the truth.
Are you hearing me? For some of us older people, listen, we allow people to come to bring their will, and they put their will on us. We just constantly, you ever hear something inside of you say, man, I don't really want to do this, but why are you doing it?
Yeah.
I guess my Christian heart, just off where they need it. You have just violated your will and you allow that person to walk over your will.
Yeah.
Are you hearing me? This is the reason why you get burnt out after a while.
Yeah.
Right? And now you're not answering the person's phone call. And you know what would have avoided all that? If you would have just said the truth.
Right.
In the first place. How many?
Yes.
Especially black folks. Hey, you got $50? Let me pray about it. You know the answer was no before you even hung the phone up. Now ask yourself how many times you wouldn't pray to God when you gonna get that $50. You know you wouldn't go out to pray about it, so you just lied. But why don't we have the boldness to say, I can't help you? You see, it's gonna get to a point where you can't say, I don't have the money no more because God's gonna bless you. So why are we using old religious terms to defeat people? Are you hearing me? We're using old religious terms. The same thing you've been saying to people since you was 20 years old. I don't got it, man. You lie, because you do got it. Then they hang the phone up. I don't got it to give. I know, when you go to work, call it, I'm sick. Sick of work. You hang the phone up. I used to do that all the time. Hang the phone up. Sick of work. Do you see? And so those are religious laws you place in your heart on how to deal with people. Are you seeing that? Some of us allow our gifts to be overran by people. Right? I was talking to my daughter Marquise yesterday. She was just like, God gave me this gift of people, but it just becomes a burden on me. That's because now you have allowed people to put you as God in their life.
Right.
Instead of leading them to God. God never told us to be God in people's lives.
That's right.
Are you hearing me?
Right.
This is where we go wrong in relationships.
Yes.
Women, listen, you cannot, men are not putty. You can't take them out and use Legos to build them up. Put a little bit here, make them a man here, put a little bit heart in here.
That's right.
And he'll be just perfect. He'll see that I did all this for him and he'll stay. Anybody? Uh-oh. Women gonna be mad at me. Listen, I'm like the prophet now. Yeah, listen, I'm used to the millennials get mad at me now. I see what you go through, prophet. They just be mad at me for no reason. You didn't have to tell me the truth. That's what y'all millennials say. Y'all didn't have to tell me the truth.
Thank you.
You didn't have to say the truth like that. Listen, did you know the Bible tells you that flattery, listen, in the end, flattery, people who tell the truth, in the end, listen, flattery, what is it? Flattery. It's a laying trap at some people, but it says frankness, that's what it is. Frankness, in the end, will be appreciated more than flattery. Right?
Right.
It amazes me how girlfriends are walking outside with their girls, and I know that girl had to tell them, ask them how I look in this outfit. And nobody had the courage to tell them, girl, take that garbage off. You don't have the body for that.
Right.
Now, back when you was 20, yeah. You've had 3 children now, and nobody want to see what you show. But you know what the girls tell them? Girl, you fine. You lying right to their face. And then you call that your friend.
Right.
Oh my God, y'all better. Listen, I know, listen, I used to wear body shirts all the time, tight muscles. Listen, I'm not gonna put no body shirt on. All right? Right now. I'm not gonna do it. That was back when I was 220 pounds. Cut. I don't have no abs no more. And so I'm not gonna be walking around like I do. All right? That's called wisdom. Because y'all gonna be laughing at me anyway. But some of y'all gonna say, Dad, you look good. Lie right to my face.
That ain't it.
I used to talk to the prophet all the time, and when we were younger, and I asked him about something like, man, how this look? And I notice now that we always laugh about it now, but he would always, his voice would always get high. Oh man, you look good. I know now that I really don't look good when his voice gets high. Yeah, notice how people's voices change?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's good, man. But where's the bass in your voice at then? We laugh about that now, but he didn't want to break his twin's heart. Are you hear me?
Yes.
And vice versa. I did the same thing to him. Oh man, yo, oh you good? Walk away, man. You take that garbage. Listen, is the Lord speaking here?
Yes.
And so there's rules to every, and there are laws and there are boundaries to every relationship. The reason why we get injured is because we never set any. Yeah, anybody ever had anybody try to press upon them and all of a sudden they just, what's it called? You let somebody in and all of a sudden they just become, oh man, just real, just calling you every single time, every second you ain't got no time. Anybody?
Yeah.
Hmm?
Yes.
You just become real, oh my God, it's just large on you and all of a sudden you complaining because you never set any boundaries.
That's right.
Are you hearing me? You never set any boundaries. I've had to have some rough conversations with people lately. You know that? And telling them the truth, not in pain, not in strife. See, most of us only tell the truth is when we're injured. Then we'll. Let me tell you about yourself. But we can avoid relationships being destroyed because as Christians, we do let people in. It's okay to let people in. But let me set some boundaries. And I found out, even with a person that deals with rejection, everybody knows a person that deals with rejection. And everybody in here, because you're in the spirit, because you're in a prophetic church, you have the spirit of discernment. Did you know that?
Yes.
But the enemy has you use it for bad. I'm gonna show you. Because let me tell you what the spirit of discernment is. First of all, the spirit of discernment is to hear from God. Amen. Discerning of spirits is different. That's actually to see what evil spirits are. I can discern what God's spirit is versus evil spirit. So you have the spirit of discernment, which is understanding what God is saying to you, or seeing something on somebody. See, or now I can see now I have the discerning of spirits. You have to ask God for both in the prophetic realm. The discerning of spirits. Immediately, if you notice, when I look at somebody, I can see which spirit it is. Are you hear? The eyes, I can, especially in the eyes. When you look at the eyes, God will speak and say drunkenness, hurt. You know what I mean? Jezebel, whatever it is. God will speak the spirit and tell you. If you notice, when we call it out, it comes forth, right?
Yeah.
And so, God is giving us all those spirit of discernments. And you'll see a person with rejection, and you'll look at them, just attention-getting spirit. I ain't gonna answer them. Is that gonna help that person?
No.
Huh? Oh man, this person. Listen, if you picking your phone up and you feeling anxiety because somebody's calling you, and you can't tell them, listen, bro, you off the chain, man. You need to stop calling me like this. You just stop calling. You just shut the whole relationship off. Right. Is that gonna help the person? Because the person will tell you that they're getting rejected. And the person will talk to you, as a matter of fact, I'll give you an example of T. When we first talked, And I'm saying because we had a conversation. We've had to have a rough conversation, didn't we? I'm not going to say the conversation.
Yes.
We've had to have a rough conversation already, right? It's not hard to have a conversation, a rough conversation. I mean, it's very hard to have a rough conversation. But I had to tell her some things that it wasn't just the dad in me saying, you're beautiful. Let me show you now what the enemy is trying to place on you. And at first, you didn't want to hear it. That's okay. But in the end, like the Bible says, she appreciated the frankness over the flattery. Yeah. She was able to come back the next day and say, yeah, he was right. He was right. You see, because the first day she met us, man, y'all heard from God, man. God was good, man. And then when God told her about her mess, well, I love y'all hearing from God now. But she was able to lower her pride and say, guilty, God. How do I help? How do I get out of this? Are you hearing me? That's what God wants you at. Being a self-corrector. You know when I see a person who's getting mature in God, they become a self-corrector. They'll go argue with somebody. They still may have a bad habit of fussing, but they'll come back and say, you know what? I'm sorry, that came out the wrong way. Are you hearing me? Until they're able to be totally delivered from it. And so I make that example because I remember she told me, like when she first got here, she said, I don't understand why people reject me all the time. I go through rejection. And this is the most loving person I ever met. I mean, when I tell you, she got the super softest butters, Pillsbury dough heart I ever seen in my life. I mean, very loving person. Anybody that ever hugged her, she got the best hugs you ever.
Yeah.
Amen. You just sink into the hug. Yeah. But why would people reject? Are you hearing me? Yes. And if you go look at the root of people, you see that she was injured. And so when people deal with rejection, they'll do things that they don't even realize they're doing to try to be accepted from people. Are you hearing me? And so, I'm not talking about you now, I'm just talking. I made that example already. But they'll begin to start doing things that are what you call socially unacceptable. And so, again, when I was speaking 2 weeks ago, I said, God spoke to me and says, listen, if I show you something about somebody and you don't say it, I'm going to hold you responsible for the outcome of their life. But if you tell them, and then they still stay that way, the blood is on their own head. Are you hearing me? And so God has have all of us seen this stuff in people, not to talk about them, but to go to them and correct. Listen, let me show you what's on your life. Let me show you what the enemy has placed on you. And I can see now, because people will tell you what's going on in their life. I can see why people are always trying to reject you now. Because, listen, this is really not socially acceptable. And really in relationships, and I got to say this because God is pushing me to say it. Did you know you can have a relationship with a demon? Yep. Some of us, and God begins to show me in here in this house, you have even those who've been injured, especially raped when you were young, or you didn't feel like you had a voice in your house. You begin to start talking to yourself in your natural head, but you really got befriended by a demon. And I begin to start, listen, God confirmed this. I talked to 3 people that dealing with stronghold, and I said, you know what God showed me is you befriended this demon. And every one of them said, he's right. You're right. Because really, the demon makes you feel like you're the only person that's going to understand. It's going to understand you. Nobody else understands you, so this voice in your head talks to you and understands you. Are you hearing me? And so, you know what the hardest part of doing it? So God's been giving me strategies on how to deliver, because I'm like, why is this person not getting delivered? Why are certain people not getting delivered and set free? It's because that person really don't want to let go of the friendship of the demon. And if you cast it out, it comes right back because that person feels empty because the demon actually became part of their personality. Are you hearing me? Yep, listen, y'all better catch this. Y'all better catch this. Because some of us have best friends as demons. You just think it's your voice in your head protecting you. You think it's your voice in your head giving you guidance. Yeah, don't do that. That person don't like you. Stay away from them. It's a demon talking to you. And you have befriended this demon. Are you hearing me? Amen. And so, in order to break free of it, you're going to have to divorce it. Some of the demons turn from friends and it actually turns to a spiritual husband. It starts sleeping with you at nighttime. You have these dreams where male or sometimes male and female come sleep with you. You befriended. If you go back and look at the root of where you got rejected at in your childhood, you'll remember that during that period, all of a sudden you became to separate yourself from people, and all of a sudden you had somebody to play with, really in your head. Now you hear me? Yeah, y'all know I'm telling the truth. Listen, I can tell by the looks on your face I'm telling the truth, y'all. Sade got delivered from a spirit of 1122. That was the name of it? And 33, I think. Do you know she had a childhood? Listen. We've experienced some demons since Sade been here that we never experienced before. It was just a new level. Demons came forth. It was childhood, and she began to tell us a story that the demons were actually, because her mom would always let her be by herself, and so she became lonely. And so she actually befriended this. She said she would go into the bottom cabinet, and these demons would come every day, and they would play with her. As she saw these demons, they would come play with her. And then she said, even one of them said, I want to marry you one day. I want to marry you one day. That becomes the spiritual husband when he gets older. And so these demons come in and begin to start playing with the little child. And I remember it came forth. It actually started singing nursery rhymes when it came forth. It was saying something like that. 1122, 1122. And I said, what was the name of those demons? Because we kept wondering, like, why she keep saying 1122 or whatever. She said that was the name of her friends with childhood. So when you see people having, listen, snatch your child up if they're young enough and they say they got an imaginary friend, they really do. Amen. Are you hearing me? It's demons that are playing with them. Are you hearing me? God never meant for our imaginations to be blank. Never meant for your imagination. That's why yoga is a gateway to demons. Are you hearing me? God never meant for you to just be your mind just to be relaxed and numb. And I'm gonna tell you another thing. Some of you that's dealing with insomnia or whatever can't sleep. Listen, and they got what you call Christian sleep music and all this other stuff, and you just listening to these meditation music. Cut that garbage off because there's other enemy.
I just did the other night. Oh no.
There's other enemy. And you wondering why your dreams are getting worse while you sleeping? You can't sleep. And sometimes they put Christian titles on this stuff. Christian meditation music. Well, if I'm a Christian, I deal with the demon that's keeping me from sleeping, not try to meditate to get you to sleep. Are you hearing me? And so a lot of even I've asked them several questions like this, like, hey, have you ever listened to this type of music? Yeah, I did before. Are you seeing how the enemy is entering people? You see? And so some of us have friendships with demons. Just imagine you entering a friendship with a demon that tells you to stay away from everybody. It tells you to protect yourself because it never wants you to have a friendship. Even Sade would tell me that, I think she talked to Dion even as well, and said she would just stay away from women and she didn't know why. She's like, women's just, I don't know why I would just stay away. Did you know why the enemy tried to keep her away from women? Because that's her greatest ministry. So he always tried to afflict her with women. And so she always said, well, I just hang around boys. I just hang around because they're not as messy as women. Are you hearing me? And when we asked the question, why? She didn't really have an answer why. You know, it started when she was a little child. Then stay away from that person. You start listening to his voice. And so how do we expect a person who's a little child, who befriends a demon, to actually know how to operate socially in life? Are you hearing me? How? Because that person has not really had a social life with people. And so that person doesn't know what's socially acceptable. It doesn't know that this is unacceptable. And so if I just met you, Devon, you first time I'm meeting you on the street. Hey, man, what's going on, man? Yo, you Christian too? Yeah, you Christian too, man. Hey, can you pay for my dinner tomorrow? Come over. Come over and spend the night at your house, man? With you and your wife? Yeah. Would you allow that?
Absolutely not.
You see that? Do you see that? Because, first of all, it's socially unacceptable for me to do, but because I want a friend so bad, because I want acceptance so bad, a person that's saying this stuff or doing this stuff don't really know they're doing it. It's not until I accept the person in my life as that person can actually feel comfortable enough to be able to do it. But people with rejection don't have no limit where they can say, that made me kind of wrong. That's that. And so what they do is they filter everything through the spirit of rejection. Are you hearing me? And so everything is through the spirit of rejection. You may have said one thing to them and bam, it's up here. But I'm noticing that it's not them, it's the demon that's constantly causing everybody in their life to reject them. Are you hearing me? And so they'll never ever enter into a good relationship. And God says all of this can be, I say that to say this, God says all of this can be solved if you just tell a person the truth. Are you hearing me? Not in a hurtful way. Not in a hurtful way. But hey, listen. If you continue to do that, I can see the enemy gonna make people reject you because.
And you'll notice a person's eyes like, oh man, I didn't even know I was really doing that. I was just trying to get accepted. Are you hearing me? Oh, everybody's quiet in here. I'm either telling the truth or I'm lying or something. Am I telling the truth in here? And so listen, that may be some hard truth, but we're going to encounter people with the spirit of rejection. We're going to have new people coming in here. And you know what I loved about the older guy that we gave to last week? He worshiped harder than anybody in here. I was watching this dude. I was amazed at his worship. I forgot who told me. He said he came in and they said, hey, you want to have a seat? He says, no, I'm in the presence of the Lord. I can't sit down. Are you hearing me? While we looking down on him because he looked like he a bum. Oh, he looks like he's been through some stuff. But he never sat down. He worshiped the Lord. And God says, I met his needs because he worshiped me. Are you hearing me? Because he didn't care what he looked like in front of us. He got in that water and that could have been his only dry outfit that he had. And he says, I'm getting baptized. I don't care. Are you hearing me? And do you see how loving he was when those of you that hugged him after we gave him money? He says, I love you guys. Oh my God. And through the prophet, God says, many have not shown him grace. He has not God. That shows me right there that you can be messed up, a drug addict, and God says, my grace will still find you if you worship me. Oh, yeah. My grace will still find you because he worshiped me. This guy's hand was in the air. Are you kidding me? And he was genuine. And God says, I met his needs because he worshiped me. Are you hearing me? Y'all better. It's not for us to say what he did with the money and all that stuff. I don't care what he did with the money. Because guess what? He's going to get to heaven and God says, didn't I grace you on this day? In church Unchained, and I had people given to you, and you still use the money for this. See, I gave you my grace. That was another opportunity for him to come out. Are you hearing me? Right. It's not for us to try to judge that. Right. All right, I'm getting there. All right, let's get to the third one. Legalism is the mental attitude, and this is going to be called spiritual legalism. It's the this type of legalism is the mental attitude or false belief which seeks to earn or deserve the blessings of God by religious rituals or good works for either salvation or sanctification. This is the third time.
Say it again.
It's the mental attitude or false belief which seeks to earn or deserve the blessings of God by religious rituals or good works for either salvation or sanctification. This is called spiritual legalism. This type of spiritual legalism is the most dangerous that we have. Now, the other one destroys relationships. It does. But this is the most dangerous.
Can you repeat it one more time?
Sure. It's the mental attitude or false beliefs which seeks to earn or deserve the blessings of God by religious rituals or good works for either salvation or sanctification. Anybody else? You get that? And so this is the most dangerous type of legalism. And it happens in the church all the time. Spiritual legalism. It's us adding our own rules to God's rules and treating them as they're divine. You get that? Spiritual legalism is adding our own rules to God's rules, and we treat them as they're the divine word of God. That's pretty bad. Now, you hear me? We've all experienced this in a lot of religious churches where they put their own rules on people. And I've had plenty of people, like, again, I've said when a pastor gets injured, they would create a rule that you have to do this and you have to do this to obtain God. Anybody ever been through that before? A natural rule. You see, it's the most common and deadly form of legalism. And you'll see this up in Mark. I'll give you an example of it. Mark 7:7. Jesus is sitting there eating, and the Pharisees come up to him and says, "Hey," he says, "Why your apostles and the people following you? How come they didn't wash their hands? How come they didn't follow the traditions of our elders?" That's what they told. And they asked Jesus, and Jesus rebukes them. It says, "You teach human traditions as if they're the word of God." Now, how many know that washing your hands is good? But if I tell you, if you don't wash your hands when you come to the service, you ain't gonna be able to make it to God. And I put that on you. I've just took a tradition of men and I've said that you have to do this as the be all, end all, be all to get to God. And if you don't follow what I say, I deem you as rebellious and I have the whole church reject you. Now you hear me? Even in some cases telling people, don't talk to this person no more. Anybody ever experienced that before? It's real. It happens in church. I've seen people try to control people's nail polish, hairstyles, outfits. I mean, you name it. And if you don't do what they say do, you're now deemed Jezebel, rebellious. Are you hearing me? But a true apostle and prophet always comes against man's traditions. That's one thing you'll know. You'll take a note. If something grieves you, and you know what I talked about? This is what really made me just hurt about it. As we begin to start coming out of different churches like that, I would talk to different people, and they would say, for years I felt that way. It's like, I felt the same thing. Are you hearing me? I felt the same thing, but I was scared that I was coming against the pastor if I said anything. Are you seeing that? Because why? The pastor has now gave you a law that has seared your conscience, and it had you separate the law, the letter of law, from the spirit of law. And so many people in church and religious churches, that's the key that the pastor actually gets to. It separates the spirit of the law, your conscience that God speaks to, and it just tells you to follow the letter of the law. And by the way, the letter of the law is what I say too. Now you hear me? And so your spirit is talking to you saying, something's wrong here. Are you hearing me? Something is wrong here, but you ignore it. We have no right, you guys can stand to your feet, almost done here. We have no right to heap restrictions upon people that's not in the Bible. Are you hearing me? Now, are we going to accept what's wrong in the Bible when God says a man that sleeps with his mother is, listen, we're not going to let somebody come in here and say, I'm saved and I'm sleeping with my mom. We're just not going to do it. I'm not going to accept what is wrong in God's eyes.
Right.
That goes with homosexuality, that goes with anything. But we are to love the person that's going through that. Are you hearing me? Amen. And help that person see the error where the enemy attacked them at. Yeah. Because if it wasn't for God, we'd be all the same way.
That's right.
Perverted.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Some of y'all got some secrets in your closet that we just don't know about. You done tried it too. You just didn't like it or something.
Oh my goodness.
Raw truth. Raw truth. But we have no right to you can give me some music there. Okay. We have no right to heap restrictions on people. And God never said anything about it. Are you hearing me? I have no right to say if you don't wear white, everybody got to wear white Sunday. If you don't, you're rebelling against me. No. That's a man-made, it's called spiritual legalism, and it's a man-made law. And this is where the church is injured at. And so when you're dealing with people in relationships, I want you guys to realize that you must set laws, boundaries in people's life, in your life. You're gonna listen. Some of y'all gonna need to go back to people who have been a burden on your shoulders, and you're gonna need to have a conversation with them. Listen, I can't do it anymore. It is not my job to be God in your life. Are you hearing me? Some of us are sinking. You're giving money away that you don't even have to help somebody else out, and you're saying, God, where's my blessing at? And God says, I never told you to do that. Never told you to do that. And the gift I gave you to help people is to bring them to me, not to yourself.
That's good.
You know what people have most of all? Approval addiction.
Yes.
You have approval addictions.
Yes.
You need the approval of everybody to make you feel good. Are you hearing me? And so God has you in your life right now in a standstill. It's because some of you got approval addictions, and God got to break it off your life. Where God has said yes to everything, and now all of a sudden he says no to this. Now, God, I don't just feel you with me. You mean out of 10 years that God has blessed you, one year went bad, and you're saying God is not real no more? Approval addiction. You're seeking the approval of God. You seek the approval of men. Are you hearing me? And if you seek the approval of men, they're your God. Choose men and down you go, the Bible tells you. If you select a man as your God, down you go. Trust in money and down you go. Trust in man and down you go. God speaks of this all the time in the Bible. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
And church do have rules over certain things. I want to tell y'all. For instance, the water. Let's just say the water in the cooler back there. All right. There's no rule in the Bible about selling drinks in the study hall. Are you hearing me? Now that the church can rule over and say, hey, the drink's gonna be $1.50, or they're gonna be free to the servants, or this person can have a drink, or this person can't. That's what I'm able to rule over as a minister, because God gave me because I'm a leader in the building, I'm able to make a decision on that. Are you hearing me? But how dare I say, if you don't buy this water, every time you come to church, you're in rebellion, and God's not gonna bless you. Are you hearing me? I'm in a very dangerous position there. Thank you, Father. It's very dangerous territory. And so in my closing, many people think the essence of Christianity is following rules, even rules that I call extra biblical. Anybody been extra biblical? You see? Those type of people that wake up and say, oh God, I need a word from you. Let me close my eyes and open the Bible and point right here. That's okay, that's what you're saying to me, God. That's called extra Bible. Do you think that the enemy can't have you think of a scripture or open to a page that he want to guide you on to? Are you hearing me? You see, if you be very careful with your desire for God, because this is what people go wrong at. Your desire for God can get tainted by the enemy because we put a natural want on it. God, I want you more than anything, like it's a pair of shoes.
Right.
And so what would you do in the natural to get a pair of shoes? Oh man, I gotta get these Jordans. I'm gonna do anything to get these Jordans. And the enemy says, yeah, I see the desire that he'll get anything. So send a familiar spirit.
Mm-hmm. Come on.
Demon as the other Jesus.
Right.
Are you hearing me? Bar Jesus in your life. And you begin to chase things that's not of God.
Right.
I'm hearing the voice of God. I'm hearing it. Are you hearing it? Be very careful of chasing God. When God tells you and speaks to you about the desire, I want you to have a desire for me. He's talking about give up everything that's not of him. He's not talking about you chasing him naturally, God, but I want it. He can care less about that. You know how you show God you want it? Sacrifice. Here you go. You can have this now, God. I don't want to watch this no more. Are you hearing me? God, you can have this now. I don't want to look this way no more, God.
Yes.
You'll stop separating the natural law with the spiritual law. You'll say, God, your will be done.
Yes.
Are you hearing me?
Amen.
The God began to speak to me. Listen, Lorente, you're supposed to be prophesying with us right now. You're supposed to be prophesying with us right now. God said. Right now. Many of you supposed to prophesy with us right now. You know what y'all looking for? God, I'll put a time. Give me some time to get ready. What is it, 2 years? 3 years? Who put the term on it? 5 years? 10 years? Or is it when we're dead, then you finally gonna say, oh, God, I'll do it. What God says, you're supposed to start off wiping their sweat, but you're supposed to be down with them soldiers. That's what God says. Yes, I choose you, my soldiers, my strong soldiers.
Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord.
Are you hearing me?
Yes.
And so I'm not going to force anybody to do God's will. And if you're not ready, I'm definitely not going to put you up here. But immaturity has stopped you. Even immaturity to communicate. A child doesn't communicate. Are you hearing me? You just run in the corner and be quiet. That's what a child does. But you have to open it up and communicate. And I hear the Lord say, I'm going to break the spirit of anxiety off of your lives today. Those things that plagued you. And this is the reason why God got to get rid of the spirit of rejection out of you. Because the minute somebody say, I don't believe what you're saying. And the minute you get it right with God, you're going to have approval addiction. Now I need to hear it again. I need to prophesy to somebody else so they can tell me I did it right. And then the other part to that is the enemy gonna hit you with, nah, I don't believe what you say. And you'll begin to start cursing people because you think you're hearing from God. All because you desire God. You see how the enemy does? But you put your natural desire on it instead of spiritual desire. God says, let me take all this away from you. Let me take the rejection from you. You hold on to that. But we want the sweet gift of prophesy. We want that. We chasing gifts instead of God.
Yes, Lord.
And God says, I want a relationship with you.
Yes. Yes,
I want a relationship.
my God.
Not religion. Not a set preset thing in your heart that says, this is me.
Right.
Even when some of y'all go for the Holy Spirit, what do?
Lord.
I'm going on a 30-day fast. God, give me the Holy Spirit. And God says, if your heart was right before me, you just ask, I will give it to you. But because you see me as common to man, I withhold it from you.
Jesus.
Because you treat me like I'm a man, and you treat me like I'm your husband. You treat me like, I want some shoes, honey. Let me give my honey a little something.
Like a jump off.
That's how we treat God.
That's the truth.
I'll give a little extra money, God,
Yep.
this time.
Yep.
Maybe you'll give me the Holy Spirit. And it reminds me of the story in the Bible where they're laying hands on, and the man of God, that people are getting the Holy Spirit. And I forgot the man who came to him. He says, hey, give me this gift. He said, how much is it for this gift that I can lay hands and get the Holy Spirit? And Peter turns to him and says, may your money perish with you, but thinking that God's gift can be purchased. For there's all types of evil and bitterness in your heart. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
May your money perish with you. Listen, do you think God needs your money?
Jesus.
Do you think God needs you to fast 40 days? This is why fasts don't work for most people. Because you separated the law from the spirit and you just look at the law. I'm going to go and fast. This is how I'm going to do it. God, maybe you'll give it to me. Maybe you'll notice me then, God.
Right.
And God says, daughter, I already noticed you.
Yes. Yes.
I already noticed you. I told you. Listen, I told you to let this go before yet, but you keep saying, notice me, God. Notice me, God. Let go, son.